Skull Vikings Nation, what's going on? Declan Goff here from Score North. It's another edition of Vikings Vent Line here on a Sunday evening. We're going to have Chad, Frank, and Michael join us to bring down some Vikings takes for us from the last week. A lot's been happening, and on Mackie and Judd and on Purple Daily, we've been discussing a lot of purple needs as my title belt falls off a little bit here. But we're going to have plenty to talk about on this evening's show of Vikings Vent Line. We'll talk Anthony Barr. We'll talk a little bit Vikings free agency, even Kyle Rudolph now saying goodbye. He's off to bigger and better things. We'll touch on that to wrap the show. But as always, Vikings Vent Line is sponsored by my friends at Corona Hard Seltzer, the only hard seltzer made with Pure Beach 5s, rocking our mango flavor today. Usually I go with that blackberry lime on Sundays. We're going to go with the mango to start things off. So Corona Hard Seltzer, the only hard seltzer made with Pure Beach 5s, imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois. It fuels my takes. It fuels other people's takes. And I'm happy to bring on three guests here this evening to talk some purple. We're going to have Chad, Frank, and Michael on the show today. I did not hear where Michael is from. I know Frank is in Italy. That's right. If you think you're a diehard Vikings fan, Frank is up at 1 a.m. right now, ready to bring us Vikings Vent Line takes. So if you ever think you are a diehard purple, and I know they're all over the place. We've had people on this show from all across the country, the United States. We've yet to have an international guest. Frank is going to be the first one to do so for us. Chad's from Northeast. We'll get Michael on, who has rivaling the only title belt that's better than my $10 one here from your local department store. But at the same time, we'll waste no time. We'll get Chad, Frank, and Michael on here to break down Vikings Vent Line. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. And yes, Michael, one up in me with this Viking skull belt. Did you get that custom made? Like, how did you get it? Was it a gift?
Yeah, I actually found somewhere a link that make custom belts. So just kind of like back and forth on emails, and just kind of told him what I wanted, and yep, he nailed it, pretty much nailed it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, yep. So for those that don't know, Phil Mackey just moved out of his place, and he gave me some of his old stuff, and this was one of the WWE title belts, and I thought, oh, this is great. I can wear this around my satchel and then also give it to someone at the end of the show, proverbial throwing across the screen. But as I told you guys in the pre-show, Michael already has the leg up. He's got his own skull belt there, and now I think I have to get the same one you did, man. I'm gonna have to get a recommendation because that's absurd. It's a fancy belt. I love it.
We can definitely talk about that.
I like it. We'll have to do so. Corona Hard Seltzer and also some WWE custom made title belts. Those are two of my favorite things that power Vikings Vent Line. Boys, let's start off with this show, and I'm going to start off with Chad. We'll then go to Frank, and then we'll go to Michael. So obviously over the last week, we've heard a lot about Anthony Barr. He is unwilling to take a restructure. That's from our own Darren Doogie Wolfson here at Score North. He's due $15 million in 2021. That's the second highest paid player on the Vikings. I'm someone who is in the camp of, if you can move on from this guy, do it. But there's analytics, there's other people that are a lot even smarter than us that say that Anthony Barr means a lot to this Vikings defense. And it's not just because he doesn't get enough sacks. He pressures the quarterback well. He's a very good coverage linebacker. He does a lot of things that might get unnoticed in the box score. So I want to start with Chad. Chad, should the Vikings keep, trade, or cut Anthony Barr?
Yeah, so this is where you're going to hate me, Declan. I started out, I wrote down a whole bunch of thoughts, and initially I was all about 100% you got to keep Anthony Barr because of what he means to the defense. Zim uses him in ways that manipulates the other offense, that dictates protections for the other offense, because Anthony Barr cannot be blocked by a tight end or a running back. So they have to scheme to use an offensive lineman to block Anthony Barr. So even when he sims pressure, even when he's not coming on a blitz, they've schemed a lineman to deal with him, and that opens up things for other people. I think when you see how the defense lost so many people, the defense was terrible this past year, and it's because we lost so many people. We lost Joseph, we lost Griffin, we lost Hunter, we lost Barr, and I think Barr is actually an underrated part of that loss. He was opening up windows for other people. So that was where I was going to come down. I was going to be an anti-Declan person here. And in general, I'm against cutting someone that creates a hole that you have to spend money to fill. And if you want to replace Anthony Barr with someone, even if it's only with Eric Wilson, even if you just want to re-sign Eric Wilson to replace Anthony Barr, he's going to cost $6-7 million a year. And Anthony Barr's dead cap hit is 7.8. And so ultimately, you're paying the same amount of money next year for less production, for poorer production. Eric Wilson had a 12% missed tackle rate last year. Anthony Barr, in his most recent season, had a 2% missed tackle rate. So you're paying the same amount of money for lower production. So I would say if you can extend and renegotiate with him. I think when he says he doesn't want to restructure his contract, he's talking about a Kyle Rudolph. I don't want to lower my salary. I don't want to give away money. But if you could say, we're going to give you more money, we're just going to spread it over more years, and we're going to make the last 2 years that we extend you, we're going to add 2 years to your contract, but we're going to put a big chunk of your salary roster bonus for those 2 years, so that if we do end up having to cut you or trade you, we're not going to have to pay that money. Where we lower your cap hit this year, we lower your cap hit next year, and by the time we get to a heavy cap hit, if the production isn't there, we can cut you without a lot of damage. I think that's smart. If you don't want to go that way, then you have to recognize that you're going to have to invest in that position. Anthony Barr is a unicorn, and they use him in a way that a normal player is not used. When he was almost going to go to the Jets, they weren't going to use him the same way. I think that's part of why he decided to come back here. So if you're going to trade Anthony Barr, you need to get a first or second round pick that you can turn into another unicorn. You need to get a Karamoa type of player who's absolutely a Swiss Army knife that can be used in all kinds of different ways, where Zim can scheme him into strength. But I think the smarter thing to do is to extend him in a smart way, where you can keep him here, you can lower his cap hit for the next 2 years, and then you can put the Vikings in a position to say in 2-3 years, when he's 30, 31, 32, to say, if the production's not there, we can cut you without a big cap hit.
I like it. Yeah, I think what you have to go with is, I don't think you should be in the business of just cutting him outright, because even though you save a little bit more than you're saving in the dead money, if you can find something for him, you can find that second or third round pick, then that would be the ideal situation to go about it. He's definitely a better player than I think he gets a lot of rap for. It's just like you said too, Chad, the money you're giving out to someone who is basically a linebacker, and it's not that the position is obsolete, but it's not going to something that could really help you right now. And a linebacker for $15 million is just a lot of penny to pay. And if you can get out of that contract too from the long term, I think that would be a good way to go. But Frank is live from Italy, I believe. Are you rocking a Randy Moss jersey there, Frank?
Yes, absolutely.
So Frank is live from Italy, and it's past 1 a.m. out there. That's not going to stop him. He has some Vikings takes to give out. So Frank, do you think the Vikings should keep, trade, or cut Anthony Barr?
Declan, I'm not a big lover of Anthony Barr. I kind of enjoyed him in his first couple of years, but then I think his production has gone down up until last year, where he missed basically the entire season. I think he got injured in the second game, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe that even though they won't say it openly, our team is in the business of rebuilding. So we need to find ways of actually freeing space on the salary cap. It's going down $15 million, I think, and we're already like 6 or 7 million below what it should be. And Anthony Barr is going to make 15 millions next year. I agree with you that he should not be cut, especially because I believe that if he's traded or cut, basically from an economic standpoint, it's going to work the same way. We're going to pick up almost 8 millions of dead cap, and we're going to save about 7 millions. That is, if he's traded before June 1st, because I think after June 1st, it gets a little better in the sense that those 8 millions are, it's like 2.5 this year and 5.5 are pushed to next year, and we're saving about 12.5. So I'm thinking if we can get something for him, I believe it would not be such a bad deal. I haven't seen him ever since. I think he was the last time he was at an All-Pro of any level. It was 2015. His production is slowly in 2019, the last year that he actually played. I'm concerned that he's not wanting to restructure. He's probably learned something from Riley Reef from from this past offseason. I don't know. I'm thinking that he could be the kind of player that maybe goes somewhere else and he actually plays well. He was playing a 3-4 at USC, so he was playing a different linebacker position that he's actually playing with the Vikings in our 4-3. I remember Don Capers was brought along because maybe he wanted to change something. He wanted to show some kind of like a 4 linebacker setup, but I don't know what happened to Don Capers, and I'm scared that Paul Gunther is going to make the same end this year. He's going to be brought up, but then he's not really going to do much. Per se, I don't mind him, but I think that this team has invested too much money, as you guys say in Purple Daily many times. We have too much money in too many positions that are not predominant in today's game. We have a lot of money invested in our quarterback. I was looking, Anthony Barr would be like 8% of our salary cap if he stays. I don't think that's the way to go. I think the way to go once you decide to rebuild is to actually free space, get rid of the players that cost a lot, that don't produce much. So I'm in the business of trading him or eventually releasing him.
They're all good takes there, Frank. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there that when you look at how much salary cap goes to someone like a linebacker in Anthony Barr, it's just a lot. It's a tall task. 15 million, 8% of the cap. We know how much Kirk Cousins is making. That's accepted. At the same time, then you have to figure out ways to basically trim the fat. And I think both Chad and Frank made the point that you basically, if you're the Vikings, you're not admitting you're rebuilding, but you are transitioning, if you will. You're retooling. And I know no team likes to ever admit that we're not ready to win a Super Bowl this year, but the Vikings are handicapping themselves, like you guys said, because the salary cap's coming down. They have to figure out a way to get out of it. And that means you have to cut Anthony Barr or trade or move on from the contract. You have to have these kind of conversations. And that's why it's even more difficult when you have someone else like Riley Reef in the fold, too. I know we won't really touch too much on him today, but it's part of the convo that if you need to get under this salary cap and you also are trying to fortify your line and fortify positions that need upgrades, it makes things a lot difficult. So, Michael, we'll wrap up with you on this first one. Do you think the Vikings should keep, trade, or cut Anthony Barr?
Well, I kind of see both their points, and both are great points. But I just feel like we got to get underneath that cap salary, and and like Spielman said, there's some really tough decisions to be made, and if he's not willing to restructure, I think you got to make that tough choice, and you got to cut him to get underneath. Although his stats may not show, everything that he does, but I think he does a lot of stuff that people don't see. He does free up a lot of other guys, like back when we had Griffin, Linval. He did a lot for them too. I think he does a lot for the secondary also. But I'm on board to, if you got to do what you got to do. If we got to make that sacrifice and cut him. You can also draft a rookie. I know that's not the best choice sometimes, but if you look at it this way, you get a rookie deal, a really cheap linebacker, and if you can get a Micah Parsons or a Xavier Collins, which I love Collins, he's a really great player. If you can get them on a cheap deal in the next 4 years, I think that's a great investment. And I'm more for, the O-line's been a disaster the last couple of years, and I'd rather, because all the hate on Kirk Cousins and we need to protect him. I feel like Spielman has definitely avoided the O-line. He's always spent money somewhere else. And I feel like Kirk can get us a Super Bowl. I mean, he really could. He's not the greatest quarterback. I feel like he's a good quarterback. But I feel like if we can just protect that guy and just see really what he could do, I'd rather put the money in investing in O-line, maybe go get a guard. That's just my thought. I'd rather invest the money in some O-line, protect Cousins, let Cousins cook. We got weapons. We got Irv Smith Jr., Thielen, Jefferson, Dalvin Cook. So that's just my take on that.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at if the Vikings are going to run it back in 2021, well, running it back means it depends on how you want to look at it. If you want to run it back as in, do you plug back into Danielle Hunter off a neck surgery? Okay. Anthony Barr's coming off a torn pec. All right. Mm-hmm. Michael Pierce, although he's staying in phenomenal shape, he hasn't played football also in 2 years. That's just a lot to ask. So when Michael says, instead, why don't you just cut it? Why don't you just go all in on the offensive line? Just pony it up, pay 10, 11, $12 million. That's still a lot of money for a guard, but at the same time, they haven't had the guards that have protected him, that give him enough time to make the plays happen. And even if you're a Kirk apologist, or you're against him, if you give him the resources and you put the line against him, I mean, then all the eggs is in his basket. He has to deliver at that point. As critical as, Mackey and Judd and myself have maybe been on Kirk at the same time, if you want to put the resources and get Joe Thuney or go get someone who is obviously one of the top 10 to 20 guards in the league and surround him with that line, then let's see what happens. And I think it's worth exploring too. And it transitions really well to their next question too, because do the Vikings still have enough on defense? And if you cut Anthony Barr, look, I know Judd is always doom and gloom, and he thinks with the neck injury to Danielle Hunter that a neck injury is significant. I totally get that. I still think this dude is still going to come back and be one of the best defensive ends in the league. He's shown that his entire career. I know neck injuries are scary. I think he comes back in, and with how horrible that defensive line was last season, I don't think it gets any worse than what it was. So I think Danielle Hunter comes back, and that's fine. Linval Joseph, he's still young. He stayed in shape. He picked up CrossFit. He did things to stay active. I'll believe it. I bet he's still a much more of a linchpin on the defensive line than what they were rolling out there last year. You had cornerbacks and rookies that took the step up. So is there anything else that the Vikings really need to address on the defensive line? Chad, we'll start with you. Do you think the Vikings have enough right now on defense to compete in 2021?
And before I get into that, I just also want to say it makes no sense to me to cut somebody that creates a hole. Anytime you want to cut somebody that creates a hole, you have to fill that hole. And so unless you're saving so much money that you can fill the hole and move on, that's why cutting Barr makes no sense for me. But to your question, Declan, I apologize for.
Well, you're good.
Yes, absolutely. They need to sign a lot of free agents on defense. Not a lot. They need to sign some free agent defensive players. Ideally, for me, every year you would go into the draft feeling comfortable about your starters and drafting people for the future. I don't think we're in that position. I don't think anyone thinks we're in that position. But the signing of Weatherly, I think, is a gigantic plus. It's someone who knows the system. It's someone who's productive here in the past. I think when you look at the potential for the defensive line, with Pierce coming back, with Hunter coming back, hypothetically, if we assume that they're both going to be there and at their full potential, then you're getting close to having a pretty full defensive line room, with Weatherly, with Wanham, with Adenabo. That's a pretty solid group. I think you still need some interior. So reaching out and finding someone named Harris to fill the interior, whether it be Roy Robinson or Shelby, I would like either one of those to come in as a free agent. And then obviously there's a big question mark at safety, whether Anthony Harris is going to move on or whether he's going to stay. I honestly am one of the people who thinks that they can sign him for significantly less than they paid him last year on the franchise tag. But if they can't, there are people you could bring in. But I would like to fill as many holes as we possibly can via free agency before we get to the draft, because it gives you the power to draft whoever you want. Right. It gives you the power to draft the best player, where you don't have to draft, defensive end 3 when it isn't called for. I think they should be working free agency to fill the defensive line and the defense in general.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. If you can bring back Anthony Harris, even on half of what he was paid under the franchise tag is always honestly overpaid for what the player is, because it's just the 1-year deal. It takes the top 5 players at that position, and they were kind of forced to do so. And if you can bring Anthony Harris back on half of that, if that's $5-6 million, well, if the expectation is he bounces back somewhere in the middle between being a PFF All-Pro player and being who he was last year for $5 million, you can absolutely do that. I also think you bring up a good point too of if you go into the draft knowing already what you have solidified, then you don't have to take a reach. You don't have to reach for Garrett Bradbury as a center like they did 2 years ago, right? Like you can figure out the best player to take available with a bunch of skill position players like wide receivers and tight ends who could be there for the Vikings at pick 14. So, Frank, what do you think? Do you believe the Vikings right now have enough on defense? Obviously, yeah, they still solidified some stuff. They put Stephen Wedley back in here after a year in Carolina. What do you think? Do the Vikings have enough on defense right now?
Last year was scary. Honestly, I'm not a big lover of Mike Zimmer. I think that he's a defensive coordinator disguised as a head coach, even though I don't think he's yet learned how to be a head coach. The only thing that we could actually sleep, without problems was the fact that our defense was going to be good. And then last year came, and I know there are a lot of justifications, but we were 29th in the league, and it was really, really bad out there. In particular, I mean, it was almost 40 years that I've been following the Vikes, and a massacre like the one that I had to witness on Christmas Day, actually night here, in the middle of the night over here. I mean, it was 52 points, 580 some yards, 6 touchdowns rushing. I agree with what you said. Okay, so I think that Hunter coming back, if he is healthy, that's going to mean a lot for this team. And also, I also think that perhaps it's almost as important the fact that we're going to plug in Michael Pierce, because we had no pressure at all whatsoever in the middle. We know that Zimmer likes that A-gap blitz, and honestly, we had no pressure coming in, in the middle this year, and that exposed our secondary, I believe, even more than what their actual limitations were, because the other teams' quarterbacks had so much time back there. I'm scared that Daniel Hunt in and play without some kind of contract adjustment. Right now, I believe he's the 18th highest paid pass rusher. You guys have mentioned that in your show many, many times, and I'm pretty sure that he's going to command some kind of upping of his salary. From that standpoint, perhaps his injury works to our advantage, because he's not gonna get as much money as he probably would have if he was coming out the year that he had 2 years ago. But I think that Hunter will also make better whoever plays on the other side. Let's remember Odenigbo and how well he was doing when Hunter was in. So that is really, really a major thing. I also think that our cornerbacks are going to grow. The growing pains are going to slowly go away. Cam Dantzler really impressed me in the final part of the season. We signed Stephen Weatherly, so we're doing good. That having been said, I think we still need help in 2 defensive positions. One is at defensive tackle, so the guy that's going to line up next to Michael Pierce, because please do not put Jaleel Johnson on a football field anymore, because that's really painful. And the other position that I really think we should we should be looking at is safety. I agree with you guys. If he takes a big pay cut from the 13 plus that he got last year, Anthony Harris could remain, because it's always an advantage to have a guy that knows your playbook, has been on your team for a while. Otherwise, if he really thinks that we're gonna break the bank for him, let him walk. I was looking this afternoon at the options at safeties. I don't think, because of what we said, talking about Anthony Barr and other things, that we have a lot of money, that we will have a lot of money, but I still think that we can get on the free agent market for some second tier players. And therefore, whatever does not come from the draft and the offensive line, which is really, I won't use the term that I'm thinking of. Whatever does not come from the draft, it has to come from free agency. You got Russell Okung, Alejandro Villanueva, Kelechi Osemele, and they're all good second-tier left guards and left tackles, because a lot of things also depend on what you're going to do with Riley Reef. If you're going to move Ezra Cleveland back on the left side, if you're going to keep him on the right. So a lot of things have to be clarified before this goes on. And you have something like 10, 11 very, very decent safeties that you can bring in. Apart from the very expensive ones, you got Keanu Neal, Jacques Guitart, Malik Hooker, Kareem Jackson. You have a lot of players that you can sign for a lot less than 13 plus. And the only position that I really think that we could have an issue, going back to what we were saying before, is if we have to plug somebody in at linebacker. If Anthony Barr goes, then that could be a difficulty.
Yeah, I think if Eric Wilson can slide in, it's great. I mean, he fielded admirably last season. I don't think he was a total disaster. Chad brought up the good point, too, that there was some missed tackle rate. He's not the player that Anthony Barr is. That's clear. but he's probably going to make a heck of a lot less money. I think Michael brought up a good point too in the last side that if you can just find a linebacker in the side, I mean, they found Eric Kendricks in the second, third round. That he was a day 2 draft pick, and he's been arguably one of the best linebackers in the league sneakily for the last 4 or 5 years. You can find linebackers. You don't have to reach for someone early in the first round to solidify that. So it does cause problems. I think Frank brings up a good point. Just because you cut Anthony Barr and you save salary cap space, well, then that's one more hole that you have to try to figure out. I think Danielle Hunter's situation is worth monitoring. He definitely is underpaid. He should feel the need that I need a new contract, but he's against himself right here. He's coming off neck surgery. The Vikings have all the leverage to do what they want. So if that's either Danielle Hunter says, then trade me, okay, we'll listen to it, because I think teams would come calling for Danielle Hunter. Or 2, you can figure out that Danielle, look, we'll give you some money here. We'll figure out something, but you do have to prove it. You're coming off a significant neck injury. Before I get to Michael Chad, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was. It just as it relates to Danielle, if they offered you a 1 and a 2, Declan, do you do that for Danielle?
Yes, I do. I think I do. I think you have to. I mean, he is a special player. He's young, but with how the Vikings are against the salary cap, and if they're really 2 years away from competing like significantly for a Super Bowl, I think you have to at least consider it.
I agree. Yeah.
I think you absolutely have to consider it. Yeah, no, it's a good point. I love the reckless speculation, because I think it's definitely worth exploring if you can get a first and a second. Michael, what do you think, though? Do the Vikings have enough on defense right now? Do they have enough to run it back, or is there other pieces that they should probably look to add in free agency or the draft?
I'm all for adding other guys. If we can get some cheap deals, some guys that are good players on cheaper deals, I'm all for that. And I'm all for bringing Anthony Harris back for a cheaper amount, definitely, because he had a very down year. He wasn't the player we saw 2 years ago. And I get it. Players have down years all the time. But, like Spielman always talks about continuity. If you want to keep the same players and the same system, if we can keep Harris on a cheaper deal, even like a 1-year deal, I mean, that'd be great too. I feel like if we can get some veteran guys, maybe go out and get a veteran safety, or I think it'd be great to get a veteran corner to come in with these young guys, help them out, help them kind of grow in the system. I love Dantzler. I think Dantzler's going to be a stud. I like Gladney. He's coming along too. But yeah, I feel like these next couple of weeks, depending on what happens with Danielle Hunter, I don't know all that, if it's smoke or fire, that he's liking all these tweets that he's going to be traded or he wants to be traded. He's liking all these tweets. That's going to be interesting to see what happens with that before the draft.
It kind of feels like a ticking time bomb, right? I mean, what are you going to diffuse it? Are you going to let it blow up in your face? What do you want to throw it around somewhere? Like, what do you want to do with that grenade? Because it's definitely going to blow up. It's going to blow up.
Hey, Declan, can I add something? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say, he probably learned from Stephon Diggs. He probably saw Stephon Diggs throw his little rant and rave he wanted out.
Yep.
And he's probably, I mean, I could be wrong, but he's probably saying, hey, maybe if I want out, I just need to go on social media and just show my way out. So,
yeah.
I mean,
I think it's also fair. It's fair to realize that Zim is good at creating pressure. You don't have to have a dominant one guy. He's good at manufacturing that when he has several talented people but no superstar, right? Griff was a 4th round pick. Hunter was a 4th round pick, 5th round pick. I'm making this up. I don't remember. Having that interior is one of the more important parts. And honestly, I don't mean to go back to this necessarily, but having Barr there to be able to manipulate protections is incredibly important. So if you don't have Barr, then you have to find some other way to be able to manipulate those protections.
Absolutely. But I do think with how Danielle is going to go here, you do have to figure out where you want to go, because as you said, yes, Stephon Diggs, you can criticize how he went about it, but at the end of the day, I mean, Stephon Diggs was correct in his assessment that I didn't want to play for a team that was going to be run heavy, and he goes to Buffalo, and the game plan is basically do the Randy ratio, but with Stephon Diggs, he finishes with 100 some receptions. Look, look, I thought Josh Allen was going to be a disaster for them, and Josh Allen blossomed into one of the best quarterbacks in the league last year. And I think a lot of that has to do with Josh taking a step up, but a good chunk of that has to go to Stephon Diggs as well, because he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. So it's a ticking time bomb. I know we're going to get into it this week on Purple Daily and on Mackie and Judd. It'll be something to figure out. Boys, last question here as we wrap up. Kyle Rudolph said goodbye. He's moving on to bigger and better things. I'm curious to see where he goes. I feel like it's Seattle, because Seattle's like the grim reaper of end of tight end careers. Greg Olsen, Jimmy Graham went there. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Russ in Seattle, and that's a completely different conversation, but he could go somewhere here and obviously still chase a championship and still has a little bit of football left. But I do find it interesting that in his Players Tribune piece, he mentions Sam Bradford. He talks Matt Castle. I mean, Matt Castle. It has no mention of Kirk Cousins. And at the end of the day, hilariously enough, Christian Ponder was the one who threw him the most touchdowns in his career. No mention of Ponder, no mention of Kirk Cousins. I do think that there is something about both of their egos, and Kyle Rudolph and Kirk Cousins, that they have very similar styles. So I don't know if that's just conflicted. The two of them hooked up for one of the greatest Vikings plays in a long time in New Orleans in the playoffs a few years ago. That deserves credit. It was a fun moment to see. But what do you guys make of Kyle Rudolph saying his goodbye from the Vikings and also basically neglecting the quarterback who he was with for the past few seasons? And we'll start with Chad.
Yeah, so I mean, it's super fun if it's a shot, right? Like it's so much more fun if he's taking a shot. I don't know if that's what was happening, but I would believe it. Kirk doesn't really seem like the easiest guy to be buddies with, and Kyle seems like a buddy kind of guy.
Yeah,
Kirk is kind of a try too hard person for me. That said, I think there's two ways to look at this, right? So Rudy named 6 current Vikings in his letter, 2 defensive superstars in Harrison and Kendricks, and 4 young players who are just getting started, 2 linemen, Bradbury and O'Neal, and 2 superstars, Cook and Jefferson, right? So that seems fair. That seems okay. He also said that he wasn't going to name everyone because that would have been a really long roll call. Current players that he didn't also name: Anthony Barr, Adam Thielen, any of his fellow tight ends, Riley Reif, Anthony Harris, Dakota Dozier. Okay, just kidding about that last one. But he did also name all of the quarterbacks that he's played with on the Vikings, except for Case Keenum, who was only here for a year.
Yep. Christian
Ponder, and Kirk Cousins. So, yeah, I think it was a shot. I think it was a shot. I think he was taking a shot. Totally. I think Rudy was a little raw.
Totally.
I think it's a little misplaced because Cousins is going to throw to the guy who is open in his progression. He's a robot. That's what he does. I'm going to go through my progression, and when the person who is in order is open, I'm going to throw it to that person. And every so often, I'm going to have a software malfunction, and I'm going to melt down and double clutch and get sacked, strip sacked. But more often than not, he's not going to see Stephon Diggs wide open 40 yards down the field because he wasn't in the progression. So it's misplaced blame there a little bit, but I think there was a little bit of, I think there was a little raw there. One thing before I cede my time, the tight ends drafted after Rudy in the year that he was drafted, where he was bitter about not being taken in the first round.
That's right, yeah.
The list is Lance Kendricks, Rob Hausler, Jordan Cameron, Luke Stocker, DJ Williams, Lee Smith, Richard Gordon, Virgil Green, Ryan Taylor, Daniel Hardy.
Yeah.
The only person who even comes close is Julius Thomas, and he did it for like 2 years.
Right.
He is totally right to be raw about not being more recognized than he is. Rudy is awesome.
Yeah, he's a Vikings Ring of Honor guy in my mind. He really is. He did more than enough to be in the Vikings Ring of Honor. He was one of the best tight ends that he stayed here for a long time, did a lot of things off the field. There was a lot of good things that he brought to the team, on and off the field. But it is interesting that basically his most memorable play of his career, that play in New Orleans, and there's no mention of Kirk Cousins. I do find it a little interesting. Frank, what do you think? All the way from Italy, when you read that, did you think that Kyle Rudolph was taking a shot at Kirk Cousins with that, or was that just a little misplaced?
I think that Kyle is a very classy guy, very very elegant in the way that he actually comes out. It wasn't by mistake that he was a Walter Payton Award finalist a few times, and therefore I don't think that he's the type of guy that would just come out and take a shot at someone unless it was something really that got on his nerves. So I think that the slight of actually not mentioning Kirk, that's like the highest level of disrespect that a guy like him will actually allow for. After all, I mean, you guys mentioned it a few times, and I totally agree in your show. It's a 2,000-word essay. It's not like a tweet. It's something that he has prepared meticulously. He's checked it. He's read it. He's had somebody else read it. So whoever is on and whoever is off, it's not by mistake. Bradford, Cassell. I mean, Teddy, I can understand because I don't know anyone that could actually not like Teddy. But come on, Matt Cassell. Sorry, I don't know. I mean, the message it's kind of clear. It's no surprise to anyone that Kirk is not a locker room favorite. He's absolutely not my favorite. I think this is my personal opinion. His personality is his biggest limit. I mean, the guy's got talent. The guy does have skills. He just does not elevate his game under pressure, and he's not choked when it looked like it would actually when it actually had a chance to go to the playoffs this year. It's because we do not have leadership anymore. Everson Griffin was gone. Stephon Diggs was gone. You can say whatever you want, but those guys were competitors, were fighters. Who the hell was doing anything? I mean, this guy, the only thing that he was actually known for is that he complained about Garrett Bradbury's butt sweat in training camp. And then the other time that they actually talked about him is because he was arguing with Adam Thielen on the sidelines. That's not, the guy's got a C on his shirt. He's our quarterback, and therefore he should definitely lead. And that is not something that Kirk Cousins is capable of doing. One aspect that you guys mentioned in Purple Daily that I think should not be forgotten is that Kirk's gigantic contract probably prevented some signings and some renewals, perhaps even his renewal at the tight end position for another season, because we have so much money invested in the quarterback position. And one final note I'd like to add: I totally agree with Judd. Right after Steve Jordan, because Steve Jordan is in a category of his own as a Vikings tight end. Kyle is number 2, and you are absolutely spot on. He's got to go Ring of Honor as soon as possible because he's a class act.
Yeah. He did way too many good things on and off the field, I think, to not be considered for that. And I know sometimes we get too much into honoring players that were good, not great. But I mean, he spent his entire career here. He has almost every accolade there is. Yeah, I mean, Steve Jordan. If Steve Jordan's the bar, I mean, Kyle Rudolph's knocking on it, man. I mean, he's on the door. He's literally knocking on the door of being in the same category. Michael, what do you think? When you heard that from Kyle Rudolph in that Players Tribune piece, did you think there was some smoke or fire there, or was it just a thing that we definitely took out of context? It blew out of proportion. What do you think about Kyle Rudolph's goodbye from the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, to be honest, like we all loved Rudy. We all saw the writing on the wall. We all knew it was coming. He's going to be cut. You got 2 up and coming young tight ends, Irv Smith Jr. and Conklin. It's definitely sad to see him go because he is even though he's not from Minnesota, he definitely says Minnesota.
Right.
If you go on social media, you see him at Wild games, Twins games, Timberwolf games. So, I mean, him and the guys, you see him, they go out together. So, and all the things that he does for the kids, the hospital, the end zone, just most respect to Kyle Rudolph. But I think he is a very classy guy, and the letter was thought out very well. He didn't just go on Twitter and just write something up real quick. It was definitely, like you guys said, it was thought out. He didn't miss anybody on purpose. So I think it was a jab. I think it was kind of a jab to Kirk Cousins that, hey, this guy is taking all the money up, and all of us guys that love this place got to go. So, and then kind of like a side note, we had a wide receiver, BC Johnson, the Skull Lounge. Was it last summer? Right before the season started, and I brought up Kirk Cousins, and he did not want to talk about it. So he said, "I'm not touching that." That's what he said. He said, "I'm not touching that." He said the locker room he feels like is split on Kirk Cousins. That's all he wanted to say.
Interesting. Dude, I love the reckless speculation there. There's some inside reporting. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I
can send you pictures of BC at our house. It was really, really great time.
For sure, man. And look, I also feel like he had such a solid rookie season last year. And I know Chad Beebe finally emerged. I made my thoughts on Chad Beebe clear all season, but like Olabisi, I felt like people just were sleeping on him all. Like he wasn't used at all. He wasn't targeted. I found it kind of strange. And look, he was a 7th round pick. He worked his ass off his rookie year to do what he was doing. And then last year, I mean, now if you're the Vikings, I mean, he's battling for a spot at this point. If you're going into training camp, like I think he's still, odds are he's on the 53. But I mean, he was so solid as rookie. He was a nice little possession receiver. And last year he was an afterthought. I couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Well, and at the same time, he was supposed to be the starter while JJ rotated in, and it just didn't work. Like he was not there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It is a good point. Guys, great takes. This was a lot of fun. This was a ton. I love doing this every Sunday night. Thank you so much for taking some time with me. The proverbial championship belt. I know Michael's got it around his waist. I had him as the pre-Azan favorite, but I got to give it to my man Frank in Italy. Frank, you had some great takes here. You stayed up late with us. I think it's only fitting that you get 60 seconds here. The floor is yours to say whatever you want on the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Declan, for having me on the show, and I'd like to thank the 2 guests that were on with me, because their takes were equally as valuable and interesting as mine. I'm 50. I've been following the Vikings for 35 plus. My rant is that as a 50-year-old, I will rant just like Judd does. I'm tired of being good. I would trade back 10 seasons of being good for 1 season of being great. I wanna get a ring. I wanna get a tattoo that says that we are world champions. So I'm hoping that this period will finally end and that we will build a team, because ever since I started following and they've all been lost. I don't mind getting up at 1, at 2 in the morning to watch the games. Sometimes most of the times by myself, because it's a passion. It's great, and following the Vikes, it's such a thing in my life that I'm actually co-host of the only podcast in Italian entirely on the Vikings. It's called Purple Valhalla. So I'm gonna shout out to my co-host and to all the guys that follow my podcast. So all I have to say is thank you again for having me on the show, and Skol Vikings.
Frank, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you, dude. That's awesome that you stay up late. I mean, like, so are the games in Italy in Italian then over there? Are they in English? Like, what? How do you watch the games?
You actually have NFL Game Pass International. It's about $150, and you can get all the games and they're actually streamed, in simulcast. So it's exactly as they're going on in the US. So it's not nice, that it's just that you got to add 7 hours. So when it's the regular 12 o'clock / 3 p.m. game, that's good. But when you go to Sunday night, Monday night, that's 2:30 in the morning, more or less. It's kickoff time.
Yeah, man, that's dedication right there. I mean, that is some serious work. So bravo. Thank you so much, Chad, Frank, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us on Vikings Vent Line. If you guys who are watching this show right now and you're discovering it for the first time, if you want to get in, we will have a bye week next Sunday for Vikings Vent Line. I'll be traveling back home from a little vacay, so there will be no Vikings Vent Line next Sunday, but we will continue this going leading up all season on Sunday nights. There's plenty. The NFL never sleeps. There's guys that are always getting cut. There's Players Tribune articles being written. There's titles that have to be handled out. NFL never sleeps. And if you're someone like Frank and you're up till 4 or 5 in the morning on a Sunday night football game, there is dedication, and I know you people exist. So if you want to get on a show on a future date, please send me an email on that bottom line right there. It's Vikings Vent Line at gmail.com. We'll get you in queue. We have some others that are already queued up for the next couple of weeks, but at the same time, thank you so much. Again, for Chad, for Frank, for Michael, I'm Declan Goff. Thank you for joining us on Vikings Vent Line. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or scorenorth.com. It is App Madness. You can register for your Pick Your Prize pack. Tomorrow it launches. So if you want $100, we're going to have drawings every day for $100. And for every person that wins that $100 gets entered into a drawing for a $10,000 prize pack. And we'll be doing that from March 8th, I believe, through the 28th. So pick your prize. It's signed up. It's right there in the links in the comments right here on YouTube and also on the Score North app under listening rewards. Again, thank you very much. This has been Vikings Vent Line.
Thanks, Declan.